Good morning, Albert.
Hey, what's up? I love that jingle.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a long time jingle back in the 70s.
Albert's known it for all of 4
sound
weeks.
like it does sound old school, no question.
You've known it for all of 4 weeks, right?
Albert, before we ask you about everything else around the National Football League and the draft, let's talk about the Bears. You saw what the Bears and Ryan Poles were able to do. What stood out most about their selections?
Well, I think they got pretty good value overall. I know Darnell Wright over Skoronski is it's fair to question that one, and I think with Wright, he's super talented, and there's some questions about his makeup, his football character, all of that. So if you felt comfortable with that part of it, he's super talented, and there's some people who believe that he could actually play left tackle too, and he had some of the best tape in the draft. Like the game he had, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but the game he had against Will Anderson when they beat Alabama, is really kind of what propelled him into this conversation, into the first round conversation in the first place. So I think you do well to get a bodyguard there. We know bodyguard for Justin Fields there, I was going to say. And we know they wanted to fortify the defensive line to come back with Florida D tackle after that. And then I just sort of looked down the line, and I know, the risk, I guess, this time of year, when we're past the draft is to point out guys you've heard of, on day three. But there are a few of those, you know what I mean? Like Roschon Johnson, the running back from Texas, a lot of people felt like was a really good player, which just sort of stuck behind Bijan there. I think that's good value in the fourth round, and gives you a good replacement on the roster for David Montgomery going. And then, Noah Sewell was another one, there in the fifth round, a guy who I think is probably going to play for you, So I think all the way around, Ryan Poles did a good job. You address your needs on both lines of scrimmage early on. I think you get a good corner prospect in Stevenson, like a kind of safety corner combo prospect in Stevenson there in the second round as well. And you pick up a couple of guys in day three who I think will have an ability to at least compete for playing time for you.
So, Albert, and we always love having you on because the insight is just off the charts. Give me your thoughts. Poles. He does not address the edge position at all. Now, they could sign Yannick Ngakoue or Jadeveon Clowney. That's a stopgap on a one-year deal. He also said, look, I can't fix everything in one offseason, and we've got 2 first-round picks next year. Do you think he's looking at this season going, I'm okay if we win 6 games because I got 2 number 1 picks, another free agent class, and another draft class. Then it'll be time to go. Or do you feel like they can win 9, 10 games?
I don't know if they win 9, 10 games. I mean, I think a lot of that will come down to the development of Fields and sort of what you get out of DJ Moore and Chase Claypool at receiver. But I think they can be competitive. I mean, the line should be better. The receiver group should be better. The quarterback should be better. And so I think offensively you've got more firepower now. And again, I just think a big part of being able to stay in games when you're in the position the Bears are in, which, they're rebuilding, and they've acknowledged that, is being good on the lines of scrimmage. And they're going to be better on the lines of scrimmage this year than they were last year. So I certainly think there's an opportunity to be competitive on a week-to-week basis. And I think at this point in the building process, that's what you're looking for. And the other thing, guys, is I don't think Ryan Poles is in this position where, he can press needs. There are certain teams that, on draft weekend, they move around on the board because they've got something specific that they're going up to get, like the Steelers, for example, right? So the Steelers move up 3 spots because they badly needed a tackle. So they go up and they get Broderick Jones. Well, they were on the edge of the playoffs last year, and they came on strong at the end of the year, and they've got a lot of history of winning. So it makes sense for them to kind of package picks and go up and go and fill a pressing need. I still don't think the Bears are quite in that position yet where you can say, okay, we're prioritizing this one need. You can look at general areas, and I think they did. We want to get better on the lines of scrimmage. But when you're talking about one specific thing, I don't think the Bears are at the stage of the game where they're going to be giving up a ton of draft capital or moving around a ton to fill one spot.
Albert, what did you think of all the movement early in the first round? Anything surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we expected surprises and we got some surprises. I think what the Texans did was super interesting. Because to me, if you look at what the Texans did, there's almost as much pressure on Will Anderson, I'd say, as there is on C.J. Stroud, because they can sit there and take Stroud and then take, say, Lucas Van Ness with the 12th pick, right, like an edge rusher with a 12th pick, and still have the 2 first-rounders next year. And then you look at, like, the return they got for Deshaun Watson, and the return they got for Deshaun Watson was 3 first-rounders. Well, that's the guard from last year, Kenyon Green, and Will Anderson, and now that's it because you traded away the extra capital that you had for next year. So there's a lot of pressure on Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans to hit on Will Anderson. There's a lot of pressure on Will Anderson himself. So that one was really interesting to me. But they obviously filled two premium positions there with high-end prospects in Stroud and Anderson. And then I think, Skoronski slipping a little bit was interesting to me just because it sort of mirrored, like, some of the things that I heard that, almost everybody saw him as a guard. And, you love him as a guard, but if he's just a guard, how high do you draft him? So there's the positional value thing. And I think what Detroit and Atlanta did was really interesting with the backs, because we've all been under this spell that running backs can't be taken that high anymore. And I think this is always going to be a great litmus test of how the league feels about the running back position in general, because Bijan is a once in every few years prospect, like Saquon, Zeke Elliott, like that type of prospect. And then Gibbs is like Alvin Kamara, right? And so you look at those two guys now, they both go in the top 12. And I think it's the league I would say the league kind of being a little ahead of where, I hate to put it this way, where people on Twitter are, where people on Twitter are, people on Twitter, but here's the way I look at it, guys, right? And follow me here, okay? There are 2 parts to this. Number one, I think football is sort of going positionless. It's sort of and Arthur Smith, he sort of looked at this as he's a big admirer of the 2013 and 14 Spurs, right? And then the Warriors of the last 8 years. And the reason why is because they play positionless ball, right? And so the Falcons are stocking their offense with all these guys. They can move around all over the place. So when you break the huddle, you don't know where anyone's going. And Bijan Robinson is a big part of that equation now, right? So they didn't view Bijan as just a running back. They viewed him as somebody, we can line him up in the slot, we can move him around. And it's look what Christian McCaffrey did when Kyle Shanahan got his hands on him, right? So and then you you go to Gibbs, and it's Gibbs is part of a larger equation too, where when Jamison Williams gets back off his suspension, he's running downfield, stretching the field. You know who's running underneath that? A guy who can run past everybody.
Yeah.
So I just think there's the league is sort of moving ahead of the conventional wisdom on running backs, where it's not don't look at the guy as a running back, look at him as a weapon. How does he fit into that? And oh, by the way, right, we talk about the second contract with these guys. What are we talking about? Dick Chubb, who's a great player, makes $12 million. Derrick Henry makes $12 million.
Mm-hmm.
You know who else makes $12 million? Freaking Corey Davis with the Jets, right? Hunter Henry with the Patriots. Who would you rather have, Nick Chubb or Corey Davis? Who would you rather have, Derrick Henry or Hunter Henry?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what the hell are we even talking about? I don't know. I'll admit it. I kind of have a hair across my ass over that whole argument. Because I do think that there's some nuance to it with guys like Robinson and Gibbs that gets forgotten.
We had this discussion. I would love your perspective. Who has more pressure on them? Would it be Lamar Jackson living up to the contract, Aaron living up to going to the Jets and maybe damaging his legacy, or Justin Fields, who he wants his 5th-year option picked up, he wants a big contract, and now he has talent around him to win with?
Yeah, it's probably Justin just because his career's on the line. You know what I mean? Lamar's already won an MVP. He's got his money. And I think a lot of whether Lamar makes it or not is going to be health related, to be honest with you. I know that sounds kind of cold, but that's sort of what it is. We know he's a great player. It's can they keep him healthy? Can they manage him in a certain way where he's going to last? I think that's the biggest question. And then, with Aaron, I do think there's some pressure on Aaron because he can really burnish his legacy now. You look at what Tom Brady did in Tampa, and hey, he was already the greatest of all time, but what he did in Tampa sort of separated him in the Belichick-Brady argument. I just think with Justin, there's more on the line because, if the Bears wind up separating themselves from him, if the team that drafts you in the first round gets rid of you, then, like you're viewed a different way. Like you're not going to get the same amount of runway with another team. You're not going to get the same opportunity elsewhere that you're going to get that you had when you were a first round pick, and you can see that with examples like, Sam Darnold, like it's teams are taking flyers on him, but they're not investing in him, So like for Justin Fields, it's either, I'm going to get my 5th-year option picked up and I'm going to be the franchise quarterback and I could make hundreds of millions of dollars here, or I'm going to be the guy somebody's taking a flyer on a year or two from now. So, I would just say it's Justin because of how much there is on the line.